Hello and welcome to episode 18 of African Football HQ. I'm Ed Dove, I'm joined by Malek Shafai, and today we're going to have a special guest as we look back over some of the big stories in African football over this week, and we look ahead to what is sure to be another big weekend of action. Malek, why don't we look back over the last 7 days, and why don't you let me know two players who impressed you?
There's tons of football: Premier League, Serie A, CAF Champions League, Confederations Cup, and the UEFA Champions League started. But I'm going to have to go with Mohamed Salah scoring his 100th Liverpool goal. It was a great finish. Unfortunately, they couldn't win, but it just highlights, you have to mention, it's such an iconic goal, 100 goals for Liverpool in such a short amount of time. You have to give him credit.
We almost can't talk about Salah and Mane without acknowledging the injury to Virgil van Dijk. A massive blow for Liverpool, a really bad moment in the game. And at this stage, we don't know exactly how long he's going to be out for, but it's going to be quite a significant period. We've looked at Salah and Mane as potential, maybe even likely title winners this year in England, but how much do you think the injury to Van Dijk changes the complexion of the year ahead for those two?
It's going to be a huge blow. We really forget how bad the Liverpool defense was. That first season, Salah was there without Van Dijk, letting in so many goals, and he's shored them up so much. It's been one of the best signings in football history, you could argue, in terms of how solid he's made that Liverpool team. And they're definitely going to be at a loss without him. I do have to mention, though, will Kalidou Koulibaly move to Liverpool now? We've talked about it in the past, but saying they don't really need him. But without their star center back out for possibly the rest of the season, you have to think that they might go for him this January.
Yeah, well, I think if it was 2 weeks ago, if it was just before the window had closed, they probably would have gone for someone. They almost certainly would have. But now, depending on how Van Dijk's fitness is looking in January, yeah, they may have to look at someone else. But for me, I'm obviously looking at the positives in this situation, and I really hope that this could be the making of Joel Matip. He really impressed the season before last, and he was unlucky last season to have really watched on for much of the campaign as Gomez and Van Dijk held down those centre-back berths. So I suspect Klopp might go for Fabinho alongside Gomez, but if he does go for Matip alongside Gomez, or even Matip alongside Fabinho, because Gomez has looked a bit ropey in recent matches, and I really hope that this can be a fresh new chapter to his Liverpool career.
Another North African performer I want to highlight is Usher Fakimi, who unfortunately lost in the Milan derby to AC Milan, but he was one of the few bright lights for Inter Milan's side that really struggled to create a lot of chances. I guess it's a testament to how good he is that the rest of the team performed poorly, and he was the only one who kind of was able to bring the standard up just a little bit to make the game a bit more respectable than it could have been.
Yeah, even though they lost, and even though they were pretty undone during that first half and looked pretty vulnerable, I actually still found myself really optimistic about Inter's season ahead, both domestically and particularly in Europe. I do question whether this squad has the depth and the quality and the character maybe to keep pace with Juventus across the course of the season. But certainly in the Champions League, they do have a lot of pedigree, and they do have a lot of quality who could really rouse themselves for those big European nights. Although it is worth noting, unfortunately, that Achraf Hakimi has now been diagnosed with coronavirus. So he will be out for the weekend's game and for the foreseeable future, and we both wish him all the best.
Pivoting on to another Serie A title challenger in Napoli, they've been on great form to start the season, and finally, Victor Osimhen scored. What do you have to say?
Yeah, well, you know me, I've obviously been a massive supporter of Osimhen and a big believer in his ability to make it work at Napoli ever since the deal went through, and even before then. All that had been missing really from him during his opening two Napoli performances was the goal, because he came on, he made an impact against Parma, then he impressed against Genoa, I think, in that second match. And now this weekend, he finally got a goal. They were 4-0 up at half-time, Napoli looking superb going forward. There was a lot of focus on the defence, that there's going to be a lot of focus on their attack. But what struck me was actually how balanced they looked and what a variety of options they had in that final third. So, yeah, very optimistic about him moving forward. Obviously, whereas a lot of players were out on international break, he stayed at home and was refreshed after that. And also credit to Simeon Nwankwo of Crotone, another Nigeria striker in Serie A, who scored as they drew with Juventus. Newly promoted Crotone, the Sharks, holding the reigning champions 1-1 with Simi getting on the score sheet again. So There were questions before the campaign about whether he could translate his Serie B scoring form to the top tier. And on the evidence of this weekend, hopefully he can do it.
Yeah, you predicted him to do well, and I was surprised that one of your predictions finally came through. So credit to you for that.
Well, I think you'll notice I actually get quite a lot of them right, almost all of them. So I'm glad that Simi is just continuing my strong record.
The Champions League has begun, and on the first match day, we were blessed with the matchup of two African goalkeepers in Chelsea versus Sevilla. Yassine Bono and Edouard Mendy both kept clean sheets, which is an impressive feat for African football. But we want to focus on Chelsea and mainly Mendy. Mendy's been off to a great start at Chelsea, replacing Kepa, who has been terrible for the past year. And we're joined by Goals Chelsea correspondent Nizaar Kinsella to tell us about Mendy.
Hi all, this is Nizaar Kinsella, Goals Chelsea correspondent, and talking about what's the latest with Chelsea really. You know, Edouard Mendy back in the team. It felt like a sort of sigh of relief when he was past fit to play against Sevilla after, you know, Kepa's troubles in recent weeks, in recent months, pretty much a year. Mendy has arrived with a lot of positivity. I think all his performances have been pretty secure, pretty dominant. What he's good at is sort of, you know, long passing, great at collecting crosses, which Kepa's not good at. And we saw, you know, against Sevilla, he made a good save from Gudelj, which helps get the clean sheet. So, yeah, he's been well received.
Thank you for that, Nizaar. Yeah, also from my point of view, it's great to see just Chelsea getting a clean sheet again, and just Mendy keeping a clean sheet, what that's going to mean for him personally, for his confidence, moving forward as he establishes himself as Chelsea's number one. I thought it was very, very worrying that they needed to register Petr Cech in their 25-man Premier League squad at the age of 38. Emergency cover when you've already got three goalkeepers suggests that you believe one of those existing goalkeepers, or perhaps two, is the emergency rather than any potential injury problems. So let's hope Mendy holds down the position from now on and we don't need to see Cech back in the Premier League.
Also in the Champions League, Emmanuel scored. Wasn't a great goal, but he had an excellent move to keep the ball in bounds on the baseline. The shot from his teammate didn't go in, but he was able to tap in the rebound. Great performance from him overall. His first Champions League win for Bruges. What do you have to say about the young Nigerian?
Yeah, well, I think this group, Dortmund, Lazio, Zenit and Club Bruges, is probably the group of life. It's a group where any of the four will fancy their chance of going through, even Zenit, I suspect after a home defeat to start off with. But you have to say this is a real opportunity for Club Brugge, particularly with Dortmund losing the opening game. I don't know if Lazio really are going to have the quality to top the group. So this could be opportunity for any of those teams, and hopefully Bruges, who have a lot of African players. There's also Angola's Mata, who I don't feel really gets the credit he deserves as one of the best left-backs outside Europe's big five leagues. So let's see. Hopefully Bruges and Dennis can find their way into the knockout stages.
Yeah, you also have to think about Percy Tau, the former Bruges player who's now on loan at Anderlecht. Would have been great to see him in the Champions League again, but he scored another goal for Anderlecht in the league, this time a header. So the South African is off to a great start. And I think it's fair to say that there are a lot of Africans who are on fire in Belgium.
Last weekend was a weekend full of derbies, with the Merseyside derby, the Milan derby, the Old Firm. And this week we have the granddaddy of them all. We have El Clasico, as Barcelona and Real Madrid go toe-to-toe. These two perhaps aren't as imperious as they have been in the past. And unfortunately, there isn't much in the way of African interest apart from Malik's favourite player, Marlon Park. However, this is a blockbuster fixture. We can't deny it, and one with a great African heritage.
Yeah, I mean, it's no Ahly and Zamalek, but we'll try our best. There's been some great African players to have played in Spain over the years. And obviously the allure of coming to one of the biggest clubs of Barcelona, Real Madrid has attracted many players in the past, and it surely will in the future. But we're going to do, on a similar note to what we've done before, a five-a-side team of the best Africans to have played for both Barcelona and Real Madrid. Ed will be covering Barcelona. I'll go over the Real Madrid side, and then we'll compare to see which side historically has had the edge. Okay, so let's do one player each. So I'm going to go first. I'm going to go for my most offensive player, one of two, but I've gone for Alex Song
first name out of the bat. Obviously, didn't have the most successful time at Barcelona, but that final season in Arsenal really showed us what he could do. And I think it's really one of the tragedies of the last 5 to 10 years in African football that Song didn't build on that success, because he did so well at Arsenal to really get into a position where he was a real threat creatively as well as defensively, earned the move to Barcelona, and it was just a shame that he didn't kick on from there. So first name out for me to start off my Barcelona five-a-side, Alex Song.
Fair, okay. Real Madrid, I'm going to go with Nigerian Mucho Adepoju. Bit of an older name, so he might be better suited for you to talk about, Ed, but not the best start, I have to say.
Yeah, Adepoju signed mainly for Real Madrid's second team. He made a few appearances for the main team, but still deserves immense credit, I think, for breaking new ground for Nigerian West African players at Real Madrid, at Spain's Big Two during the early and mid-90s. Nicknamed the headmaster, of course, he was both a major leader for Nigeria's fine team and also a superb header of the ball. So a solid start, we should say, for Real Madrid, but I'm afraid that I think I get the point there.
I'll concede.
Okay, second man, why don't you go first? Because I think I've got this one in the bag.
Really? I think this one's a bit closer. I'm going to go with Mohamed Diyara, the Malian legend. Such a very consistent figure of those Real Madrid sides, late 2000s, early 2010s. So very consistent. You don't really see an African player who's kind of a staple of these great teams for long. So I think I have to give it to him for that.
Yeah, Diyara is actually one of my kind of favourite underrated African players. He actually won 6 consecutive league titles across his time in France and Spain. First with Lyon, and then after moving to Real Madrid, which is an outstanding record. There is no other African player who's won 6 titles in a row across 2 different major Western European leagues. And it's an achievement for which he never gets the credit he deserves. Finally ended the wait at Real Madrid for Claude Makelele's successor. However, you've got to agree that he's not getting in this team ahead of Yaya Toure, who's my second name out of the hat. Maybe we saw the best of Yaya at Manchester City, that 20-goal season in 2013-14. But even at Barcelona, he was a Champions League winner, played at centre-back during the Champions League final victory over Manchester United. And I think that Alex Song, Yaya Toure combo in my Barca team, that's a really solid foundation.
I don't know. If you're looking at it on how they played in Spain, you have to give it to Diyara. Toure didn't have the best of times at Barcelona. He was great, but he is widely remembered for his time at Manchester City. While Diyara, on the other hand, you think of him, you think of his spot in that Real Madrid team.
Yeah, but Yaya he was a Champions League winner at Barca. You can't say he was peripheral. He started the final out of position, I think based on raw talent as well. I mean, as solid as Diyara was doing one very specific job, I don't think he had the breadth of quality or the skill that Yaya had. Also, if we compare them at international level, Yaya Toure inspired Ivory Coast to the Africa Cup of Nations title, whereas Diyara's Mali career never made the World Cup, made the semi-final of the AFCON, but could never get to the final. So, I don't know. For me, it's a bit of a clear on that.
You've overwhelmed me with evidence. I hate to say it, but I will give it to you. What about your next spot?
Player number 3, I've gone for Pep Guardiola's favourite player, Seydou Keita, an unsung hero of that magnificent Barcelona team, often coming on as a substitute, closing off games or playing a little more expansively. Very versatile, very technically proficient, deserves immense credit. If we compare him with Alex Song, Song struggled to adapt to the very idiosyncratic style of Barca, whereas Keita really managed to find his place there. His time at Barca began when Pep arrived. He left the same summer as Guardiola did, and was a key man during those successes. So, yeah, I've got to slip Keita in there. A great link man, I think, between my defence and attack in my five-a-side team.
He's a great player. Might have even fit better with Mamadou Diyara, given their Mali links. But I'm going to go with Michael Essien, the Ghanaian. He only played one season at Real Madrid. Jose Mourinho loaned him just for the one season. Obviously not a Real Madrid legend. Can't say that at all. But if we're going to go by evaluating their overall skill like you did for Toure last time, we have to give it to Essien.
Okay, first of all, Mr. Mourinho doesn't like being called Jose. It is
Jose, I'm sorry.
Very clear about that in the Amazon documentary. So please don't make mistakes like that.
People say my name wrong all the time too, though. So
what are you talking about, Milek? It's a very easy one to get right. Okay, I think credit where credit's due. If we're comparing their careers with Real or Barca, I think you've got to give it to Keita. But if we are looking at their overall contribution, I'm happy to go with Essien. I'm happy to give you this one. The Bison, I think, in his prime was a different level of player from Keita, who maybe, more like some of the other players we've mentioned, was solid rather than spectacular. It's just a shame for each of them. It's just a shame for Keita that Mali midfield of Diyara, Momo Sissoko and Keita with Kanute up front couldn't achieve more. And for Essien, obviously, the injuries that limited his progress.
My forward pick is Jeremy Gitap of Cameroon. I think when you look at Real Madrid, Africans who played for Real Madrid, he's normally up there in that list. Wasn't the most prolific scorer, but I think when you look at Africans, like I said, Africans that played for Real Madrid, he's there for the few seasons he had at the Whites.
Well, we maybe should have compared Seydou and Jeremy. They would have been a more equitable comparison. I think they actually came up against each other in the Africans Legends Cup of Nations we ran on Goal this summer. Very similar players in the way they were somewhat unsung heroes in their teams. Jeremy did win 2 Champions Leagues with Real Madrid, though, before moving on to Chelsea, where he won back-to-back league titles. Very versatile as a right winger, central midfielder, centre-back, right-back, centre-back, partly. Just a shame it ended so briefly. But I'm going to go for Emmanuel Amonecke of Nigeria, a member of their golden generation. His time at Barcelona was overshadowed by injury. I'm sure you remember him from his Zamalek days, one of the great wingers in European football in the 90s. Debate, obviously, as to whether he achieved as much in Spain as Jeremy did. But in terms of pure talent, I think probably Amonecke has this one.
In Egypt, he's now regarded as a mid-tier manager. So it's crazy to think of him in this context. But it's a tough one. I don't know what to say.
I think pure talent, Amonecke, in terms of their contribution to the Clasico, the 2 teams there, you've got to go for Jeremy. I'll let you have the final say on this one. Is it going to be 3-1 Barca or 2-2?
I think you should give me this one because I'm pretty confident you'll take this final striker position.
I've got someone up my sleeve. Yeah, I've got someone up my sleeve. But why don't you go first with the striker then?
Emmanuel Adebayor. It's crazy to think he played for Real Madrid. He did. Had a decent time there as well. I'm assuming the first and only Togolese player to play for either side. But great overall career. Obviously won't compare to your pick, I'm guessing though.
Yeah, although Adebayor, I mean, whereas he did look, he looked better at Real Madrid than I think many people thought he would, but he didn't do enough to earn a permanent deal. Although he did play in that famous Champions League quarter-final when Real Madrid just squeezed past Tottenham Hotspur, the club he would later go on to represent. So he did at least reach the final 4 of the Champions League with Real. However, as you are kind of acknowledging defeat already, I think that it has to be Samuel Eto'o to lead our combined 5-a-side team. Broke new ground for African players at Barcelona. You could maybe, I would personally argue the greatest ever African player, largely in part due to what he did at Barcelona. 2 Champions League finals, man of the match, before moving on to Inter Milan, where he would again win the Champions League, achieve great success at the club. And it's almost a shame he left when he did. You just wonder what he could have. Obviously, he did win the treble at Inter, but you wonder what he could have achieved had that swap deal with Zlatan Ibrahimovic not happened, and if he'd stayed at Barcelona. But that forward line with Ronaldinho, with Henry, with young Messi breaking through, I think that really was a golden team. And Eto'o was a key man in a sensational, one of the all-time great teams. So I think he is the spearhead and probably the captain for our 5-a-side team.
Yeah, arguably best, like you said, arguably the best African footballer of all time. So he has to go in this side with no debate. So what is the final score? Is it 3-2?
How do you think Adebayor is going to take being left out?
I don't know. If we did a North London derby one, maybe he'd come up there, but I don't know.
I don't know. I think maybe you'd take Kanute ahead of him.
Oh.
Maybe you're getting both. Kanu and Kanute, I think, with Adebayor on the bench.
All right. So to summarize the final, if we take the best from each side, defense, go one to you, right?
Alex Song, Yaya Toure in defence. Then you get the midfield, Essien and Jeremy, and Samuel Eto'o rounds it off for a 3-2, a narrow 3-2 Barcelona victory.
And I guess Amonecke could also double as coach as well.
Yeah, okay, we'll have him as a coach with Adebayor assistant, a kind of Nigerian double act. I also want to mention I actually had the opportunity to speak with Eto'o this week ahead of I was part of an interview with Eto'o this week ahead of El Clasico. And the question that was put to him was, if you could see any player sign for either Real Madrid or Barcelona, who would it be? And he said that for Barcelona, the player he would love to see sign for them is wonderkid, Borussia Dortmund wonderkid, Youssoufa Moukoko. We've talked about him breaking records at plenty with Dortmund's youth team. He's registered for the Champions League, registered for the Bundesliga this season, but he can't make his debut until his birthday on the 20th of November. But Eto'o reckons that even though he's not yet made his professional bow, he is the man to be the long-term successor to Lionel Messi. What do you reckon?
Well, what I've mainly heard is that he's the next Samuel Eto'o. And unfortunately, we've heard that thrown around way too many times to players who do not pan out at all. Moukoko seems to be different, though. He scored another hat-trick on the weekend, his third hat-trick in 3 games for the U19s this season. But after the game, he was racially abused, which is terrible to see, especially for such a young player. It's terrible that he has to deal with that. So hoping that improves in Germany. But overall, great player, like I said. And if there is anyone who can be the next Samuel Eto'o, I would have to give it to him. Can he play for Barcelona? Are we making these links when he's only 15 years old? I think we're jumping the gun now.
Yeah, there's also maybe says a little bit about Eto'o's ego that the player nicknamed the new Samuel Eto'o is the man that he believes could be the ideal replacement for Lionel Messi. He also said he'd like to see Mbappe at Barcelona. So he said his dream Barca strike force in the post-Messi era would be Griezmann, Moukoko and Mbappe, which...
well, Mbappe is part Cameroonian, right? So is that why you picked him?
It would be a very Franco-Cameroonian forward line. I think I'd love to see that.
Did you get a chance to ask him whether he thinks Drogba is better than him or no?
No, we didn't bridge that ground. We did talk about whether how the Clasico would be played behind closed doors, because obviously this week's match is the first ever Clasico in an empty stadium, which will be a very remarkable feat, a very remarkable sight to see. I think a bizarre spectacle. But yeah, I think he was happy as well that Messi has stuck around at least for one more season.
Yeah, looking at it this season, there aren't any high-profile African players. I guess we do have to talk about Marvin Park. To my delight. He might come on for a cameo. I feel like we only saw him for 20 minutes and got a few tweets out on him, a little article, and now we don't hear about him too much. But South Korea have been chasing him, as of Nigeria. If he does play in this game, I feel like his value would skyrocket, and we're going to hear a lot more about him if he does.
Yeah, just hopefully Spain don't decide they're going to try and naturalize him. That would be a shame.
We will now begin the Eyes on Africa segment, where we look at the biggest stories that have happened on the continent. So much has happened politically and in football. CAF Champions League resumed, but we have to talk about the NSARS protests in Nigeria and what has been happening over the past few weeks. Protests have been occurring, just protesting SARS and their police unit, demanding for it to be ended. It hasn't happened, and unfortunately the tensions have escalated so much after many people were shot and killed by police. Very terrible to see. Very sorry to everyone who lost loved ones. Nigerian striker Odion Ighalo's made a video message to Nigerians after Manchester United's victory over PSG, basically condemning the acts of the police and just bringing more attention to the issue. Very terrible at all. And we've seen so many players bring up the issue.
Yeah, so SARS stands for the Special Anti-Robbery Squad, and this is a wing of the Nigerian authorities who are charged with dealing with robbery, dealing with this kind of crime. Not actually, incidentally, cybercrime, which is something that they have mistakenly been assumed to have under their remit. But this is obviously a very resonant story. It's a story that you will see the hashtags such as Liberate Nigeria, End SARS, End Police Brutality in Nigeria. You will have seen them on social media, both from footballers, both from musicians, Nigerian and non-Nigerian. We've seen Mesut Ozil, Rashford use the hashtags. But it also has resonance in terms of Nigerian football, because actually Nigerian players from the local leagues have been victims of SARS. And the second-tier club Remo Stars, for example, one of their players, Kazim, was killed after being stopped by police, by SARS. And so this is a story that really touches both young people, footballers, sportsmen, Africans and non-Africans, from a very grassroots level, but also it goes right to the top. We've seen evidence of that the hashtag being used of people making gestures and statements against SARS in Serie A, for example, when Victor Osimhen and Simi scored. Both of them revealed their shirts with hashtags emblazoned on them. Now Igalo, we've also seen the Super Eagles comment about it. And I think there was a premature belief after the international break that the government were going to disband SARS, which is why there was some praise from Nigeria team towards the Nigerian government. But unfortunately, as we've entered this week, that hasn't materialized. So here's hoping there's progress over the next few days, over the next week, and that things are resolved before there's further escalation.
Moving on to a more lighthearted subject, a lot has gone on in Kenyan football. First of all, there was the elections for the Kenyan Football Federation. Ed, would you like to brief us on what happened there?
Yes, it's been all change in Kenyan football this week. Presidential elections, Nick Mwendwa won with a landslide. He was the incumbent. And one of his first acts, which was, while Mwendwa's re-election was expected, one of his first acts, which was very much unexpected, was to oversee the departure of Francis Kimanzi, who had been the previous head coach of the national team, and the appointment of Moulay, aka Ghost, who will now take the reins of the national team. It was a massive surprise, considering that Kimanzi's had overseen the unlikely, unexpected 2-1 victory over Michu Sredojevic's Zambia during the international break, despite being without some of his key players. And so he will certainly feel pretty harshly done by there.
Yeah, they beat Zambia, so it's very weird to see that he was sacked. Might have to wonder what was going on in the background.
I understand there was some unhappiness behind the scenes within the camp about how Kimanzi ran the team, about how he treated some of the big name players in the squad, and his general conduct with the players, which perhaps didn't find favour with some of the more high profile members of the squad. But I'm sure that will come out in the future.
Yeah, well, with the new manager who's nicknamed Ghost, you're assuming there might not be too many issues going on in the changing room. Why is he nicknamed Ghost?
Well, so Mr. Moulay is a very well-known figure within the Kenyan game. He was the head coach of Kenya when they reached the Africa Cup of Nations in 2004. He's been the technical director of the national side. He's also held the reins at some of the big clubs locally. And even before his managerial career, he was a player and he was a goalkeeper. And he was known for coming out of nowhere to make unlikely saves. And when you thought the ball was going in the top corner, the Ghost would come out of nowhere, arrive and claim the ball. So that's why he had this nickname, for his capacity to arrive from nowhere and save goals. So hopefully it is, like you say, it is a nickname that promises a lot. So hopefully he will live up to his billing now he's back in the top job.
Yeah, I feel like we normally don't see goalkeepers move on to management either. There might be a goalkeeper coach or something else, but never usually take the head managerial role. So interesting to see if we'll see some interesting tactics from the Sharks.
That's true. And even though Kenya, there's a lot of kind of disquiet locally about the way that Kimanzi was axed, there's a lot of optimism about Moulay because he is a man that commands a lot of respect in coaching circles. And also some credit to Kenya for sticking with the local coach, for giving another local manager a chance. Obviously, they had Sebastian Minye, head of the last Africa Cup of Nations. But before that, they'd used Stanley Okumbi. They've obviously used Kimanzi, now Moulay. So they are a nation that do give opportunities to local coaches.
All right. We'll now transition over to South Africa. And the World Cup hero for South Africa, Shabalala, has returned to South African football, signing for AmaZulu. Very interesting move. He's back. What do you think?
Yeah, PSL begins this weekend. We had the quarterfinals of the MTN 8 Cup last weekend, and clubs at the moment are revealing their rosters, releasing the kind of rafts of new signings they've brought in. And yeah, like you say, the headline arrival at AmaZulu was Sifiwe Shabalala, who 10 years ago scored the opening goal unforgettably at the 2010 World Cup on home soil. Some people are claiming this is a bit of a publicity stunt, and I'm sure there is, to an extent, that element to it. But even at 36, I don't think we can really write off a player who's achieved so much in the local game. Over 200 PSL appearances for Kaizer Chiefs, 2 PSL titles, then moved to Turkish football with Özunspor. And even though he's not going to be the kind of swashbuckling left wing back he was earlier in his career, I think now we'll see him as a holding midfielder playing a much more methodical role. But I think as long as he's focused and he is going to be professional about returning to action, I think this could be a really big signing for them.
I also want to highlight another South African, previously of some fame, but not as much as Shaba. So Kilo Ranti has been rejected from newly promoted Morocco Swallows at age 30. And just 4 years ago, he was playing with Bournemouth. So kind of two contrasting tales with the former South African stars.
Yeah, he's had some fitness issues, and I think he still has something to offer. But he was, maybe when you consider his kind of profile and the kind of player he was, he's someone where inactivity and injuries can take their toll. But there have been a few homecomings, because obviously we've seen Kermit Erasmus move clubs again this summer. Another player of whom a lot has been expected and a lot has been delivered during the course of his career. But actually, circling back to AmaZulu, the signings I'm perhaps most excited about are the arrivals of Mamela and Mulenga, both of whom parted ways with the Orlando Pirates. Pirates were engaging, having contract talks with Mamela until kind of the day before he signed for AmaZulu. So clearly they were keen to, at least on some terms, keep hold of him. But ultimately, AmaZulu have their man, and they could be, I think they'll definitely improve. And I think they finished 13th last season. I think they'll definitely improve on that.
Yeah, we're definitely set for another exciting PSL season. Talking about another South African, this time on the big stage, Pitso Mosimane, the manager of Ahly, put in a dominating performance as his side defeated Wydad Casablanca 2-0 in Morocco. A great start to continental competitions for Pitso at Ahly. And additionally, Zamalek defeated Raja Casablanca 1-0. So a great weekend for Egyptian clubs. I'm wearing the Egypt kit, very proud. So what do you have to say? Is Morocco done?
I think Wydad are done, I'm afraid. I don't think they're going to come back in Egypt. Raja, don't know. I'm not as quick to rule them out. I still think we could see an Ahly Raja final, but it's shaping up. I mean, at this stage, certainly it's shaping up to being an Ahly Zamalek Champions League final, which would be, an absolute blockbuster. So that would be such a shame to have that match played behind closed doors, which will happen. But no, credit to Mosimane, credit to the Egyptian duo. And I know you're also very impressed with what you saw from Pyramids at the weekend as well in the CAF Confederation Cup. Yeah,
I opted to watch Roya versus Pyramids instead of the high-profile UEFA Champions League games. I regretted it a little bit, but in the final minutes of the game, Abdullah Said quashed those concerns when he scored a beautiful curler to make it 2-0 and put them through to the final. Great goal from Said. He has over 100 goals in the Egyptian Premier League, one of the most iconic players. Unfortunately, he's not loved by many Egyptian fans, but at 35, he's still putting in great shifts, and he has sent Pyramids to the final of the CAF Confederation Cup in their second season of existence. It's a great feat for Pyramids, but I think El Said will be really impressed. And when you look at all of his career, his achievements with Ismaili and Ahly, this might be up there.
What do you think it means for Pyramids so early in their existence, with such lofty ambitions, obviously backed by some pretty heavyweight backers? What do you think it would mean for the kind of story and the growth and the development of the club to win a major African title so quickly?
Well, the way in which they were brought up, being bought by Saudi billionaire Turkey al-Sheikh, they bought so many players. They had the most expensive African lineup, but things really went south very quickly. They weren't winning as many games. So many coaches were fired. A lot of their high-profile signings like Kino, Rodriguinho left. And then Turkey al-Sheikh left. And now they're owned by an Emirati. But since then, they've been in better form. I'm guessing they're going to win this Confederation Cup match, and it would be a great feat for any team, let alone a team that is 2 years old. But given what Turkey al-Sheikh wanted when he first bought the team, he was hoping to become the best team in Africa. And beyond that, he wanted a global brand that really transformed African football. Unfortunately, he's not going to be able to reap any of the benefits of their success right now, unless there's something shady going on in the background. But as for the Emirati owners and their current staff, it's a great achievement. And next season, they won't be playing in the Champions League again, so they'll have to return to the Confederation Cup. So they're going to have to pivot their focus to the domestic season. We'll conclude this episode by talking about some of the big Premier League matches that are set to go on this weekend. I want to start with West Ham versus Manchester City. We will hopefully see the battle of two of Algeria's best wingers in Riyad Mahrez of Manchester City taking on Said Benrahma for what will hopefully be his West Ham debut. Both great players. We got to saw them on the international break as Algeria did very well. But I'm so excited to see the two of them play, but more so Said Benrahma. I'm hoping he can become West Ham's next Dimitri Payet.
Yeah, I'm a little bit low on West Ham at the moment after that shenanigans against Tottenham last weekend. But what I would say is that, I think Benrahma is a fantastic signing. I think he's a superb player. I think for maximum 30 million, it's going to be a good deal. I just wonder exactly where he fits into this current West Ham team, because a lot of the success they've had recently, which I think is the blueprint they're going to stick with, is a 5-4-1 formation with the width provided from fullback, from wing back, specifically Arthur Masuaku on the left flank. So unless there's a change of formation and change of approach, Benrahma's going to have to adapt to a different role. Is he going to play in quite a narrow, functional midfield four, or is he going to play as a solo striker? Unlikely. Or will he be used as an impact player? So massively positive about the signing, but there are questions about exactly how he fits into West Ham as they currently operate.
Yeah, they're a team without a really solid striker. Their old signing Haller hasn't gotten off to a great start, so he hasn't been playing recently. Mikel Antonio has been being used as striker. I like him a lot, but he can't say he's a Premier League level striker. And when you compare his quality on the ball to, say, Benrahma, nowhere near. And we saw Benrahma play as a false nine and a number 10 a little bit last season with Brentford. So I'm assuming he'll be used centrally, maybe in midfield with the permission to drift forwards, or we'll see him as a lone striker. But I think David Moyes should be using him every single game.
Yeah, but something West Ham have learned more than most is what you don't do is build your team around individual, somewhat wayward, potentially inconsistent talents. Because it's a surefire way at that kind of level of being stifled by the smaller teams and being outgunned by the bigger teams. So you've got to find your level. And what they have done now is they've found a system that is effective, with Antonio as a sole front man getting in behind, with a very solid midfield with some danger from fullback, the likes of Cresswell, likes of Masuaku. So are they going to change everything up just to accommodate Benrahma, or is Benrahma going to be a square peg in a round hole shoved into that midfield? I don't think either is a necessarily good solution. So I await with bated breath how he's going to be used.
We'll see this weekend. We'll transition on to the next match, Fulham versus Crystal Palace. A lot of African storylines to look at, Ed.
Yeah, this is a big one for me. I'm really excited to see Lookman against Zaha, both of whom scored last weekend. But whereas Lookman was heavily praised by his manager, Zaha was criticised by Roy Hodgson, who wants him to be doing more. I think it's very rare that you have an attacking player who has equalled his tally for the previous season already by mid-October, 4 goals, and is being criticised by their manager for not doing enough. However, Hodgson said he wants to see more. He wants to see Zaha wreaking havoc. And you just wonder if now there's no chance of a transfer at the moment, whether his standards will slide or whether he is going to, knuckle down and really deliver for Palace between now and January. Lookman long-awaited talent signed by Leipzig for 22.5 million. We saw nothing of that quality last term, but that goal for Fulham at the weekend, I don't know if you saw it, but it had just encapsulated what he brings to the table: his unpredictability, these quick changes of pace, the ball control, the bravery to try stuff, to beat a man, to humiliate a defender. It was something beautiful. It was like Taraptada's best, and I'm really excited to see what we can get from Lookman now.
Hope so too. Going back to Zaha, last weekend he became Crystal Palace's all-time leading scorer in the Premier League with the penalty he scored. He tweeted about that, and a Kenyan fan responded to him, kind of clowning him, saying, I think it was only around 30 goals. How is your club's history that bad? And Zaha responded to the Kenyan fan saying, what I have is a lot more than your 0. So a little bit of African beef, maybe, between Ivory Coast and Kenya. Not too sure. But Zaha was lauded for his response. But looking at the other Africans, I want to talk about Andre Ayew and Ebe Eze. Ed, I feel like they haven't gotten off to the best start this season. Can you agree?
Yeah, we're still waiting for Jordan Ayew's first goal this season, which isn't ideal, but at the same time, fairly optimistic that will come. I don't think he's going to have a Benteke-style drought going on too long. And Eze,
style, you mean, right?
It's only mid-October, man. You got to give him some time to settle, to adapt, to really find his feet in the Premier League. There's people like you who are already criticising him after a few games. That's what generates problems in our young players today. So we need to hold off until for a couple of weeks, couple of months on Eze to see how he settles.
I'm just a concerned follower of the Africans playing in England. That's all it is. We're going to move on to the blockbuster match, Manchester United versus Chelsea. A lot of African storylines to look at. Igalo on the United side. Eric Bailly is injured again, unfortunately. Looking at Chelsea, we have Edouard Mendy and Hakim Ziyech. To talk about Ziyech, we're going to be joined again by Goals Chelsea correspondent Nizaar Kinsella, who's going to give us a lowdown on Ziyech's start to Chelsea so far and what he can expect from him in the future.
We've not seen the best of Hakim Ziyech yet, who, isn't really match fit. He spoke after the game and said he didn't really feel like he was fully ready yet, and Lampard's trying to get him fit by playing him in as many games as possible. But yeah, overall, it was positive against Sevilla. It was only a 0-0, but I think they were so happy to get a clean sheet. All 6 signings were on the pitch at the same time for the first time as well. So yeah, I think Chelsea are a work in progress. There's a bit of impatience building around the club, but they are trying to work in that right direction. They are trying to bring it together with the new players, with the new tactics, and all this. So yeah, it's not there yet, but Chelsea are building up to a Man United game after a result that the camp at least feels is quite positive. It's a big game, it's a tough game, and it'll be so interesting to see.
Yeah, Chelsea were pretty poor on the offensive side against Sevilla. We didn't get to see too much from Ziyech. Like Nizaar said, he's not at peak health yet, but when he does, I'm very excited. He's been such a great player for Ajax in the past few seasons. We all know what he's capable of. He's done it on every big stage, and I'm very confident he can do it for Chelsea in the Premier League. And I'm so excited to see him link up with Kai Havertz, Timo Werner, and the likes.
Yeah, well, I'm not that excited about Chelsea, but I do obviously hope that Ziyech and Mendy do prove to be success stories this season. That's all we've got time for this week. Thank you so much for joining us on another episode of African Football HQ. We are going to be taking a week off next week, so there'll be no episode next week. But please do join us in a fortnight for episode 9.